meeting for May 12th, 2015 to order at 10 a.m. And first, I think Councillor Thick has an item of late business that she would like to add to the agenda. So the subject being, Councillor Thick would like to request council to provide a leave for her to, a leave of absence essentially for the May 28th council meeting. So we're not going to discuss it now, but that's the item of late business. So Councillor Thick, you're moving to amend the agenda to add the item of late business concerning this?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a
I'd like to
seconder
move
for
that.
the amendment? Thank you, Councillor McMaster. All in favor
Of the addition.
of the addition? Thank you very much. Okay, so we have the 2/3 vote, and that means we will have the item of late business. Then a motion to adopt the agenda as amended, please. Thank you,
Second.
Councillor McMaster, seconded by Councillor Anderson. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. All right, motion for adoption of the minutes of the meeting held April 28th.
Moved.
Thank you, Councillor McMaster, seconded by Councillor Anderson. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. And minutes of the special council meeting from April 23rd. Thank you, Councillor Thick, seconded by Councillor Thurgood. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. And the minutes of the special council meeting held May 5th.
Moved.
Thank you, Councillor McMaster, seconded by Councillor Blanchette. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. All right, no business arising from the minutes. I have no announcements today. And so we'll just move into our delegation, which is Dan Lewis from Clayoquot Action. Thank you very much, Dan. You're up. You have up to 15 minutes to make your presentation. And then afterwards, we can have as much time as we like for questions and dialogue. So take it away. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Osborne. Thank you, Council, for having me today. So this report was put together, we just published this about a week ago. This report was done in collaboration with an organization out of Comox called the Fair Mining Collaborative. They are an organization which exists to help communities to cope with mining issues when miners come knocking on their door. And I think the main gist of this report is just to remind people that mining is an issue that is not going to go away here in Clayoquot Sound unless we do something about it as a community. This is the map that's in the middle of the report, and that is provided by the Wilderness Committee out of Vancouver. And basically it's just showing the areas that are staked. So there are various forms. So I guess to back up a little bit, what we did with this study was we held a workshop here in Tofino, and staff and volunteers were trained on how to use the Mineral Tenures online system. So in 2005, British Columbia moved to an online staking system where you don't have to go out in the ground like Sammy Craig used to do and pound a stake in the ground. You simply click online. Anybody who's over the age of 18 and has 25 bucks in their pocket can become a free miner, which is a whole other issue that needs to be addressed at a provincial level. So using this system, we were able to go online and map out exactly where the claims are and get information about who holds those claims. And so there's no surprise here with this map that the main area of interest is Catface Mountain with Imperial Metals. And then from Tofino, if you go up Tofino Inlet into Tranquil, that large area there is the old Fandora gold mine. These claims are held by Selkirk, which is a subsidiary of Imperial Metals. So the Catface is in Ahuzat territory, and the Fandora is in Clayoquot territory. The other major player in the area is down here on the south shore of Kennedy Lake, the old Brenor iron mine, which they're looking at reopening that. And one thing that this report is highlighting is the global trend towards mining of brownfields. Brownfields are areas that have previously been mined and were no longer considered economically viable at the time. But nowadays, with the lower grades of minerals being available, better technologies, they're going back and they're re-mining areas that have been previously mined. And that is the case with Fandora. That's an old gold mine that operated through the 40s, 50s, and early 60s. And the Brenor mine closed, I think, in the 60s. Catface has never been mined before, but people have been looking up there for minerals for many, many years. If you have any questions, just jump in. This map was produced about 5 years ago. This data would have been around 2010. And the reason I'm showing it is just to contrast the amount of staking. So what we found in this current study is that about 5.8% of Clayoquot Sound is staked. As recently as 10 years ago, you can see the whole area around Kennedy Lake staked out, much larger areas up in around Tofino Creek, a whole bunch of the Cyper, most of Flores Island, most of the Beddingfield Range, and then most of Heshquit area. So the reason for this change in the amount of areas being staked is that mineral prices are very low. And so it's very difficult for the junior exploration companies to remain viable. They don't have the bucks to hang on to these claims, so they've let them go. This illustrates the boom and bust nature of mining. And the fact is that it's very likely that mineral prices will go back up, and when that happens, we can expect to see more staking happening. This is what's being proposed. Yes,
Sorry,
Catherine?
Dan, can you, so you said originally that if you're over 18, you have $25. What's incumbent upon you if you are successful in that bid? Then what do you have to do to hold on to it?
You either have to go out and perform work, or you can pay money in lieu of doing the work. And I'm not exactly clear on the numbers, but it's, you know, a few bucks per claim to keep it going. I guess in the hundreds of dollars.
So you have to document that you've done the work. You've done
Yeah.
it.
Yes, and so one of the things that we've done in this report is we've highlighted, if you look at the page after the map, these are all the unincorporated free miners that are operating in Clayoquot Sound. And then we looked at their latest statements of work. Statements of work are where they report on what they've done. A notice of work is where they apply to do the exploration, and a statement of work is their report on what they did. They're not very detailed.
Right.
They just say how much money they spent. So for example, Imperial Metals was up on Catface Mountain last November through October, November, December, and they spent, I think, about $17,000 up there. So they're definitely interested, and they're not going to let go of that claim, you know, easily. They're not going to back off unless somebody asks them to.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, you know, this is what Imperial is talking about. This is a mine down in Utah, but the plan for Catface Mountain, that from what we've seen, is an open pit copper mine. The grade of ore up there is about 0.4%. It's a very low grade of ore, but in today's market, that can become economically viable. The company finished their drilling program in around 2010-11 and told Houseit that they had the information they needed to make a decision as to whether or not they would move ahead with a mine application, and they have not yet done that. The Houseit, as you probably remember, the council and chief gave permission for the drill program, but they have not given permission for an actual mine. So if Imperial comes back and wants to apply for Catface, that's when Houseit's going to decide, are we willing to give you permission to do that in our territory. Last fall I had it was very sad, but I went up to Mount Holly, which is another mine operated by Imperial Metals up near Williams Lake. And their tailings dam breached, and all 25 million cubic meters of toxins, solids and fluids went down Hazeltine Creek, which this creek here used to be 2 meters wide. You could jump across it. And you can see that's all tailings. All that gray stuff is toxic mine tailings. That goes directly into Quesnel Lake. And I didn't really understand Quesnel Lake before I went, but it's a major wilderness area in the heart of our province, one of the deepest lakes in the world, home to 1/4 of the Fraser River sockeye salmon. So this is a major disaster. I just came back from a mining conference with a lot of the leading advocates in the province, and this has not been cleaned up. The company doesn't really have the money to clean it up. They were using the Mount Holly revenues to finance the startup of the Red Chris mine up in the Stikine watershed in Tahltan First Nations. And so, you know, what this really illustrates is that these companies, and just the economic environment they work in, they have to always have a profitable mine, and they also have to have a new mine in the works. And if you look at how many properties Imperial has, besides they have a working mine here at Mount Holly, they have the Huckleberry mine near the end of its life, they just opened the Red Chris mine, which is a 15-20-year mine. And then beyond that, they have properties they're interested in. And the properties here in Clayoquot Sound, as I mentioned, Catface and Fandora, they're not going to back off of those properties without pressure, because they need to always show that they have another mine coming on stream. So, you know, the work that Clayoquot Action is doing is trying to ultimately achieve a provincial level ban on mining in Clayoquot Sound. We're working with the local First Nations to build support for that kind of a move. I think at a municipal level, you know, the big thing for us as a community will be the social and economic impacts of having a mine open in our backyard. It's well documented that when you open a mine, you have an influx of money, so prices can go really wacky, housing can become a problem. It would definitely have a negative impact on our tourism economy. And then there's all the social ills that come with it, the prostitution, the drugs, all that kind of stuff. So it would really, and not to mention like the hospital. If you had a mine with 400 people working in it, mines are dangerous places with explosives. And so it would put a burden on our healthcare system as well. So I think that's the gist of what I wanted to say, just to keep it, I'm mostly presenting this for your information, just to keep it in your minds that mining is a real issue. It is here to stay unless we can find some way. And what right now, the advice we're getting from Fair Mining Collaborative is that this region has a window of opportunity to come up with a consensus at a regional level on what we want to see in terms of mining in our region. Do we want mining or not, and how would it be done? If we wait until a company makes an application for a mine, then we're looking at about, I think it's a 6-month period to have the public input. Those processes are very expensive. The Oldsmobile version would be about $500,000 for our community to respond, and the Cadillac version would be $1 million. And once the company has got to the point of applying, they're very, very serious, and it's not easy to win at that point. You look at Fish Lake, they've beat that mine twice through this process, and the company is going to reapply, and they're suing the Wilderness Committee for agreeing with the panel that said we shouldn't approve the mine. So I'm open to any questions.
Thank you very much, Dan. Questions from council? Councillor Dick? Is that your hand? No, sorry. Councillor Brett?
Yeah, thanks. I'd just like to make a few comments in light of your presentation of things that are sort of current in the news. But first of all, as council, we supported the motion, or we brought forward the motion to UBCM asking for a review of the Mineral Tenures Act. I personally think we should take that back again to UBCM, asking for action on that and for UBCM to take it as a serious issue. And here are a couple of reasons. We talk a lot about downloading to the municipalities around revenues, yet the province gave 18.1 billion to the Talton, mining company, but only for 10 years. That is to postpone. You'd think for 18.1 billion, that would be go away. You know, this is not an area to mine. But no, that money from the provincial coffers went to the mining company, but only for a 10-year period. And that to me is appalling. Second in the news, of course, is it's in a different province, but I would say bears some closer examination here is the issue of royalties and uncollected royalties. And I do believe I can't reference it right now, but I have read some analysis too that in terms of the resource extraction we have, we get very little in return. And yeah, people doggedly kind of run to the defense of these industrial corporations. I used to work in the Vancouver Stock Exchange, and I saw where actually the wealth was made, and that was in the trading of penny stocks at that time, which had nothing to do with mining. And it was just, I think somebody came up with the term milking the lamb. So, you know, it's a very unhealthy industry, I think, overall at this point in time, although minerals may be needed. And I'm more inclined to say go to the brownfields than open up new areas. But I understand there's more knowledge about impacts and so forth now than we had when they were originally mining then. But anyway, I appreciate your presentation, because I think the more that we shed light on this, our municipality would be very severely impacted, for sure.
I'm wondering if you've done any sort of look into research or whatever on Just comparing British Columbia, our system that we have with other jurisdictions, either provinces in Canada or other countries, and what other models of mining tenure are out there? I don't even know.
Well, the Fair Mining Collaborative has actually done exactly that. They scoured the world and looked at legislation around the world, and they came up with a draft Mineral Act for British Columbia, taking best practices from all over the world. So that work has been done. One thing I learned this last week that I didn't really understand is, with a disaster like Mount Poly, no mine in the world can get insurance against that, and they're never required to place bonds in advance. So we have no ability to respond to this kind of disaster. There just isn't the money. And so typically what happens is the company will go belly up, and then it's left to the taxpayers. And we're seeing that with the giant mine up in the Yukon and many other mines. So that's one thing of real concern, is that if a disaster happens, and the review panel that looked at Mount Poly said, based on past performance, we should expect another 2 of these kind of disasters in the next 10 years. And the review panel that looked at Mount Poly said this has got to be an end to business as usual. Then you look at what Christy Clark is doing, fast tracking mines, opening new mines, and you know, they're probably not going to adopt the recommendations of that panel. Yeah, they're worth looking at.
What did you call them? The Fair Mining?
Fair Mining Collaborative. Yeah, they're listed on the back here, and if you just search them online, all of this material is online in executive summary format. That's pretty easy to read through and get an idea of what they've done.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Councillor Blanchette?
This change is pretty quick. Is this a document that has to be renewed every 6 months or every 5 years, or do you have a sense for that?
It's completely fluid. When we started this project last summer, the map had a lot more red on it. So it's changing all the time. These little, especially the junior exploration companies, they come and go. And you know, you look at where some of these people are based. They're based in Red Deer, Alberta, places like that. They're just poking around on a map of BC with their computer. So it's something that we're going to be watching and monitoring and keeping a track of.
Do you have a sense of how serious some of these companies are?
Well, I think if you, what we've done is we've divided this out. So in the inside cover, that's the corporations that want to mine here. And the big ones that jump out are Selkirk, Catface, Copper. Those are both imperial metals. And then Logan Resources with the Brenor mine. So they are definitely players. They have the money to open a mine. You have to have an operating mine pretty much to get another one up and running. So these companies are very serious, and we need to really keep an eye on them. In the back half after the map, these are the unincorporated free miners, and they come and go. The name of the game there is to strike it rich and find a body of ore and then sell it for millions of dollars. And that's what happened with Catface Mountain. That was bought by Imperial back in 2009. So it was a junior exploration. It was actually Selkirk was the junior company who flipped it and sold it to Imperial. So the juniors are always just grubbing around looking for the actual gold, and then they try to get someone interested and get someone who has the money to open a mine to actually buy the claims. That's where the money really lies in mining. Once you get into operating a mine, there's huge expenses, and they're not hugely profitable. I mean, I'm sure they're quite profitable, but there's a lot of expenses. Whereas to get the money for just finding the gold, you can make millions for not as much effort. So we will be watching this closely.
And what are the next steps, strategically speaking? Watching is necessary, but in order to get what we all hope for, I think, is a ban on mining in Clayoquot Sound. What are the steps?
Well, on the back page, we've outlined some of the immediate next steps, and I met with Clayoquot, and they're going to be taking those next steps. So the next steps will be to contact the actual companies that are on the land and inform them that they're on unceded traditional territory. And then, beyond that, anytime a notice of work comes in, we're going to be watching for those and looking at what they actually did and getting that information out there. And then ultimately getting out and doing some site visits would be another important piece of it.
Are you working alone or with other bigger environmental or other agencies apart from Fair Mining Collaborative?
Fair Mining Collaborative and the Wilderness Committee are the main groups that we're working with now.
questions? Councillor Thick?
Thanks, Dan. A good report, and I just, Giants in Yellowknife, right? Not Yukon.
Yes, that's correct,
Yeah.
yeah, so.
Yeah, I'm well acquainted with the mistakes that they made there as being there at the time too. I lived there at the time when they were operating. But I really thank you, and I see that, I really appreciate that you put in also in the biosphere boundary in your map. I think that's really important, and I am just about on my way to a conference in for UNESCO, and that has been a topic of conversation. So it's timely in that I'm going to be paying attention to what the others are saying, where there is mining happening in other biospheres in Europe. So
Right.
I think it's good. And I just had a suggestion that I'm not sure if you're coming to the board but perhaps doing this presentation for.
Yes, I have talked to the Biosphere Trust about that,
Yeah,
and I'm
right.
happy to speak to the
I
board.
think that would be a good idea, just as
Okay.
you say, for the awareness of it. I think it's very good.
Okay, great, I will
Thank
do
you.
that.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dan, for your time and initiative and keeping us up to date on your work.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and thanks for your
Okay.
time.
Great.
Cheers.
Yes, Councillor Blanchett.
I'm just wondering if I can ask a question of council about the delegation.
Certainly.
I'm just wondering what ideas council has as to what we might do about this as a council. It's completely out of our jurisdiction, but Councillor Barrett brought forward the idea of bringing it forward to the UBCM. Anything else that we can do?
Anyone? Any, Councillor Thick?
Well, I think it's worthwhile bringing it up. I think it is a good idea, and, perhaps we have to do a bit more lobbying or something, but I thought it was a very good motion that we had, and maybe the time is right to have that reconsidered. And I think just as we did with the higher learning, just letting people know, going to all the communities and letting it sort of sit with people, because I think for a lot of people, this will be really new information. I think they have to digest it for a little while, but I think just getting the word out there that these are things that are happening in our area and this is how it will affect us. I think this is the right approach, and I am willing and interested to consider the idea of bringing it forward to UBCM again too.
Councillor Blanchett?
Does the Minister of whatever it's called, Mines, Resources, Natural Resource Development, do they appear at UBCM? Can we talk to them directly?
Yes.
Because if a large mine were to open anywhere in Clayoquot Sound, it would go through this community like an earthquake, really, just in terms of the amount of money involved, never mind the housing situation and the drugs and the impact on Tofino's reputation and possibly its our environment as well, which is our golden egg. I really think we ought to do something about this as much as we can, just in terms of lobbying.
Others?
I'd just echo what the other councils have said, that's, through UGCM or direct meetings with the ministers, that's the best we can do in terms of lobbying up. We could do more, but it's a question of money too. It costs money to lobby. So.
Anyone else? Councillor Burke?
Just, Mayor Osborne, you crafted the motion that went to UBCM, and I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on whether or not it seems appropriate to go back and urge them to continue to take it more into heart.
I'd like a little time to think about this and follow up with Councillor Blanchett as well about the process that we use, and I can take you through what we did last time. So we did successfully see that motion passed at UBCM, and we did have a provincial response to that motion, which in my opinion was completely inadequate. And I think it would be very appropriate, if it's the will of council, that we do meet with the minister at UBCM at this point in the game to submit a new resolution to UBCM. That's a possibility. We've missed the AVICC deadline, the sort of typical way things go through AVICC and then up to UBCM. The resolution itself is not either pro or anti-mining, but it does speak to the fact that local governments and First Nations have no say in the staking of claims right now. So the whole process that starts down the track of resulting in a full-scale mine, that there's no say right at the very, very beginning of that. I think there might be some impact of the Silcoteen decision on this from the First Nations angle, and I think we should maybe just explore that a little bit more, but I'm hearing some support for more lobbying and at least the writing to the minister of, I think there's a few things we can do, but I wouldn't mind taking a little bit of time to think about that and talking to the rest of council then, and we can craft a motion and then write the letter or take it forward to UBCM again. Does that sound acceptable? Okay, good. All right then. Thank you, Councillor Blanchette, for keeping that top of mind. All right, so we're going to move into the next section of our agenda, correspondence for information. Did you, Councillor Bart, did you wish to stay, or you had expressed?
Oh, sorry.
Okay,
Yes.
no, that's okay. But if you could just explain to us why you're.
I'm moving out of the room due to conflict of interest. This was sent in by the manager of my business.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we have a letter from Liam McNeil, the Kayak Operations Manager for Tofino Sea Kayaking, who's written in a letter about parking bylaw enforcement on Main Street and thanking the district for the efforts last year and explaining that it made a difference. And we can simply have a motion to receive.
So move.
Thank you,
Second.
Councillor Blanchette, seconded by Councillor McMaster. Any discussion? Councillor Kidd?
I'd just like to add one point. It's just, I think it's really good that we're doing it. We've had lots of discussions about this over the last couple of months, and I do think that, when it comes to certain areas of town, we need to not just have the warnings, but, really talk about the ticket situation here and what's happening and what we envision for our town, I guess, is what I really want. Last night, for example, Tonkin parking lot, 72 passenger bus down there. Full parking lot, bus comes down, tries to turn around. I mean, it is a nightmare. So I just, like what we envision, not just with parking, but just the whole bus situation and where they're going and RVs and, the buses take up, like there was, finally when everybody left, there was 10 parking spots taken up by that bus. No, 7, 8, sorry. So I'm just saying that I really think we need to have a larger discussion, not just of, I know we're going to hear from bylaw discussion today, but I would like to have a more thorough discussion about what we envision for the summer in terms of how hard we're going to be about ticketing and also just what we envision about buses in this town over the coming 4 months too.
Thank you. We did start that conversation at the committee of the whole, and I think it'll be coming back to council, so. All right then. All right, Councillor.
Yeah, just that was, I sort of had a question around that. When did we expect that parking to, it was referred out, I think, to the chamber, and so when would that come back? And
Don't have a date on
that.
No date
No
right
answer.
now.
Okay. We're looking at before in June?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Before summer starts. Okay. All right, so there's a motion to receive on the floor. I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. And maybe someone can run out and let Councillor Bart know that. Thanks, Councillor. Okay, the next item on our agenda under reports is the OCP consultation, and staff have brought back a recommendation that we have seen in a past meeting agenda on the consultation required with Toquit First Nations, the ACRD, Flulet School District 70, and the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure on the Gateway Official Community Plan Amendment. Last time we discussed this, the motion to go forward was defeated, and it is now back in front of us. Councillor Burke? Anyone?
Yeah, I'm trying to still wrestle with the summary of the discussion we had with the CAO.
Okay.
Not really figuring out how to communicate that I've been persuaded that, or not persuaded, but I have sufficient information on this to understand that we could go forward with the recommendations and that the report will kind of meet the objectives we laid out for it.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Blanchett?
I can see how the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure would have some direct concerns as to what we put into our OCP. But these other, the school district, the District of Ucluelet, the Colloquiet, I'm just wondering what concerns they might have. I'm trying to imagine and can't. So is this just kind of pro forma because that's what it says in the bylaw, or are there actually legitimate concerns that these other organizations might want to address?
Okay, thank you. Good process question. Bob?
Your Worship, the process is actually spelled out in provincial legislation that when we are doing an official community plan or an amendment to an official community plan, council has to consider whether we contact these agencies or not. Typically, in an abundance of caution, we reach out to all of them. Like you, I would expect that the school district, as an example, would not reply, but we do provide that opportunity just in case we end up at the end of an official community plan process that some agency doesn't decide to stick their foot in the door and say, wait, we're really concerned about a sidewalk or something like that.
Okay. Councillor Thick?
So if I'm hearing that right, that they don't have a veto power, they're invited to the table, but if their presence isn't there, it doesn't mean that the process can't go ahead.
Correct.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Would you like making a motion?
The recommendation?
Thank you, Councillor Anderson.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Blanchett. Any final discussion on this? I'll call the question, then all in favor? Thank you. Motion is carried. Okay, Committee of the Whole, meeting minutes to be received from the April 27th meeting. Councillor, thank you, Councillor Blanchett.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Thurgood. Questions? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. Next, we have the minutes from the Emergency Program Executive Committee and a recommendation, and we'll just handle those separately. So first, the meeting minutes from May 4th for receipt. Councillor Thick?
Move adoption.
Thank you. Moves receipt.
No,
Second.
receipt.
Seconded by Councillor Bart. Any questions from the minutes? Call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. So the Emergency Program Executive Committee, as part of the meeting, we discussed a emergency siren testing policy. We discussed the fact that in California, Oregon, and Washington, all coastal communities that have a testing policy follow a monthly procedure. So the committee recommends that the emergency siren testing policy is attached as Appendix 1 to the minutes of the Emergency Program Executive Committee meeting be adopted, and in that policy that you will see the recommendation of the first Friday of every month at noon.
Actually, it says 11, doesn't it?
Or 11, I'm
11.
sorry, pardon me. Thanks, Councillor. And that is the recommendation of the EPEC. Councillor Thick?
Yeah, move recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Thick.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Anderson. Any discussion or questions on this? Councillor Blanchett?
There's no discussion in the minutes of a communications plan, which is going to be key, of course.
Yes, it is.
Particularly with regard to tourists, the
Mhm.
locals who get used to it after a few months. But I'm just wondering if that has been considered.
Yes, it has. So the committee had quite a lengthy discussion around that and is meeting again on June 8th, I think, to discuss exactly how to roll out the communications to the community and the visitors around this testing policy, or sorry, the testing policy. There are, other communities have very good examples of how they communicate this. And you're right, once it becomes a regular event, then it's much better known. But it's really important that locals and especially frontline staff understand what's going on, because then when they get questions from visitors, they can answer them and allay any fears or concerns. Another part of this is that different tones are used, so you don't use the actual emergency siren to test, but you use Westminster chimes or something that's non-emergency, and then people can also begin to differentiate.
Do we have voice capability in our sirens? Like, can we make an announcement, this is just a test over the siren?
Yes, we
Looking
do.
at Aaron, yeah.
Yeah, there's also we have that pre-recorded.
Yeah.
That'd be part of it.
Councillor Burt?
Would it therefore be appropriate to add, subject to the completion of the communications plan?
I don't think so, if you're okay with that, because it has been discussed and it will roll out.
And it's in the siren testing policy, I didn't recall.
No,
seeing
the
it.
policy, it's not a communications
Yeah.
policy, it's
No.
just a policy about how often to test the siren.
But there was no reference to that in the policy, and I'm just concerned that it be on record, because it's
Mhm.
important to this council that there be a communication plan. So I'd be a lot more comfortable if the motion, unless staff has some comment.
I would just say as long as it's not included in the policy, because the policy is very simple, but.
So I would say, Councillor Bart, we have a motion on the table to accept the policy as it is. We could pass that motion, and then we could craft a separate motion that directs staff to develop a communication strategy around the siren testing. But what the recommendation from
Okay,
our staff
it's
is that the
for the
policy be very
yeah.
simple. It's restricted only to the frequency of the testing. Okay. Councillor Finn?
Yeah, and to that point, I mean, it pretty explicitly says that in the meeting minutes, that the testing will begin in July 2015 and be preceded. And then it lists all the ways that it's going to be preceded by notification, so I feel pretty comfortable about that.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion on the floor, which is the policy as attached to the meeting minutes, and I will call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Motion is carried. So are we comfortable moving forward knowing that okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Burke. All right. And then under the last section of our agenda today, bylaws, the District of Tofino 2015 to 2019 Financial Plan Bylaw number 1206, 2015. And
Move
recommendation.
adoption.
Thank you, Councillor McMaster.
Second.
Moves adoption. Councillor Anderson. Seconds, Councillor Burke.
Yeah, are we going to hear a report on any public input responses, anything that have to be considered? I mean, we had public input, so when do we hear the summation of that public input before we move to full adoption? Also, the other question I have is in adopting this, that there's clarity that in fact, when the budget comes forward next year, that we can amend the 5-year plan according to new considerations that might help lower
Yes.
taxes.
Okay, so, and yes, and that has happened in the past. As far as the summation of the public input, I think my understanding from staff was we had the open house, we had 10 people come and speak and give feedback. 5 of the 7 members of council were there. Staff sent out an email asking council if there were any changes or suggestions to have them into staff by the end of Friday, and without that we would proceed today. So I don't think there was ever, I didn't have an expectation of a report of that. There was no note-taking or anything that occurred at the open house. That's my understanding. But
I think we need to have a conversation then about what's the point of having open houses and public input if we don't even get a summation report to support what we're about to adopt.
we could certainly talk more about how to better capture and incorporate that. But, and I think that's an improvement we can see for next year. Any other feedback or discussion on the motion? All right, I'll call. Yes, Councilor Blanchett?
I just noticed that on table 1, there's a couple of numbers missing. I don't know if that's just some kind of weird thing that happened when they stuffed it into the agenda, but it's on page 32 of the agenda.
Page 32 of 41. Oh, numbers missing.
Under the percentage of total revenue.
Oh, yeah, under Schedule B. Sure, yeah, it's page 9 of the bylaw.
Okay.
Page 32 of the package, yeah, page 9 of the bylaw. There it is. So just missing numbers under percentage of total revenue is the second column.
Yeah, if it's zero, it means that we're not
Right.
collecting revenue.
And then there are 3 though, where we are collecting revenue and the numbers are just missing. Property value taxes, user fees and charges, and other sources. It's just blank.
Oh,
It was in there in previous drafts.
yeah. It won't change anything substantially in the bylaws.
No.
It is a percentage.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councilor Blanchett, thank you for bringing it. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Motion is carried. And the District of Tofino 2015 Annual Tax Rates Bylaw 1207, 2015.
Move adoption.
Thank you, Councilor McMaster. Seconded by Councilor Thick. Any discussion, questions? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Motion is carried. Okay. Oh, sorry, I forgot about the new business. So now we have the last part. So Councilor Thick we have added this as an item of late business. Councilor Thick is requesting leave from council to miss the May 26th meeting.
And
Councilor
the
Thick?
previous, yeah, and the council, committee of the whole on the 25th. I won't be here either, but as many of you know, I am the District of Tofino representative on the Clayoquot Biosphere Trust. I'm also the co-chair of the CBT, and myself and Tammy Dorwood, who is the Tofino First Nation rep, were invited to go to the Euromab conference, which is all of the biospheres in Europe and Canada. So Canada's connected with Europe in the world situation, and we are going to participate, but we're also going to deliver, to do a workshop on Indigenous collaboration. And we're collaborating also with Mount Arrowsmith Biosphere Reserve, which has just recently been, I don't know if the word is taken over, but let's just say that VIU have taken a keen interest in that, and they are, for all intents and purposes, operating or overseeing the Biosphere Reserve at Mount Arrowsmith. So it's kind of an interesting workshop that we're doing, and in light of that, I just thought that I know that I am missing the meeting, and it was sort of impossible to schedule, so I would just like not to be, I suppose, penalized for missing that meeting in light of what I am going to do. So that's my request to the council.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just remind council that under the council remuneration bylaw, there's line 3.5, except with the prior leave of council, annual remuneration shall be paid to council members absent from regular council meetings and committee of the whole meetings as follows: up to 3 regular council meetings for vacation or sick leave purposes, after which annual remuneration is docked basically on a prorated basis, and up to 1 committee of the whole meeting for vacation or sick leave purposes, after which annual remuneration would be docked on a prorated basis. And so if council grants Councillor Thick's request to provide leave, that would therefore not affect her annual stipend. Yes?
So I was just going to share the very same thing. I'm not sure how this section applies, and apologize, we only have 40 minutes to research this. Councillor Thick to this point has missed 1 council meeting, so there are up to 3 available. I don't know if there's a plan to miss 2 more, so we're preempting. I'm not sure what the request is.
I think that's exactly what the request is. So that she's, because we...
It does not count toward 3.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And because we wrote this in that prior leave should be given, instead of coming back later in the year and asking for prior leave to be sick or go on vacation, she is asking us to exempt for this particular purpose. Councillor Blanchett?
This is neither sick nor vacation, though. So
Exactly,
does it
so
apply?
that's why she's asking for the prior leave.
I believe the wording says with the leave of council, does it not?
Yes, it does, except with the prior leave of council.
Except with prior leave.
Yes. Councillor Burke?
Yeah, it may be changed now, but I thought Councillor Fick was our appointee at the biosphere, so would that not make sense that she?
No,
or
she's
is-
not, she,
no
we,
longer?
to be
Is that-
clear, Councillor Fick is the district's community resident that's been appointed to the
Okay,
biosphere reserve. She
not
is
as
not
council.
there in her capacity as a councillor.
Right, gotcha. Okay, but anyway, I have no problem with it under these circumstances.
Okay.
If it were other circumstances, I would have a problem.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Anderson?
Sorry, just referring back to the policy.
Yes.
Is it
The bylaw.
3 total meetings to miss or 3 consecutive?
Three
Up to
total.
3 total.
Up to 3 total, correct.
There are other provisions that come in as 3 consecutive meetings, isn't it? And you.
That's
are considered
irrelevant
for-
here, yeah. I don't know the exact details, but we don't need to consider it here.
Well,
Councillor Blanchett?
I would move that council give Councillor Fick leave to miss those 2 meetings without penalty.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Thurgood seconds. Any final discussion on this? Councillor Blanchett?
Is there anything coming up at those meetings that?
It's irrelevant, I'm sorry. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Okay, then I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. Okay. No, you're a member of council, that's okay. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, questions. Does anybody have any questions for us on today's agenda? Yes.
Yeah, I guess it's more of a comment than a question or a
That's okay.
request. In regards to the siren testing policy, I think it might be a really appropriate way to communicate that through the ambassador program. And I would request that that information comes through the chamber
Thank you.
in order to add that in an appropriate way to that program.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's a great suggestion. Okay, anyone else? All right then, thank you very much, everybody. If I can have a motion read to moving camera, please?
I move that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to sections 9.1A, C, and E of the Community Charter to discuss matters relating to personal information about an individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, agent, or committee appointment, employee relations, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Thick. All in favor? Thank you. Motion is carried.